And it tells us yes, we are live. Happy Friday to everyone watching us this morning. It's still morning. Well, no, it's almost afternoon, but it is still morning. Coffee with leaders go global today. So I will tell you, grab your coffee, mug, or whatever it is, and join us as we beam all the way from Germany to welcome our esteemed guest, Rhonda Bowen, an American born. You live in Cologne, Rhonda, right?
I
Cologne
live
based
I
global.
live near I live near Cologne. I lived in Cologne for 11 years and now I live about an hour outside of Cologne. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
She's a global strategist in communication. She will guide us with or through her 35 years coaching professional for more than 70 countries to speak their ideas across borders and around the world. Welcome, welcome, Rhonda. I am so pleased to have you with us today. I was reading actually, well, I know about you. We have talked before, and your resume, your experience is impressive. I do not want to miss anything, so I'm just going to let you do the introduction and we'll take it from there. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mona. It's such a pleasure to be with you here, especially for all of you who are joining us live. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today. And for those of you who will be seeing the replay or the recording later, great that you could join us as well. I met Mona through a wonderful organization called the Global Chamber, which I have just joined this year, and it's been an exciting trip so far. And now it's really nice that I can be active in those things that Mona is doing on her own with her own global women's group, which is absolutely wonderful. I'm not in Florida, so it's not so easy for me to be taking part in a lot of the wonderful things that are happening there. But been to Florida many times in my life, but I'm a northern girl. I come from Pennsylvania
Oh,
originally, but I haven't lived in the US since 1983, and I've had my own business here in Germany since 1988. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And as you so kindly mentioned, working with people from more than 70 countries in person in many of those countries. And now with many more online, obviously, interesting places. Like I have a wonderful colleague in Nepal that I'm going to be doing a live session with at the end of August, or I've worked with people from Madagascar online. So places that many people either don't know about or maybe have never even heard of. And I get the opportunity to work together with them and make sure that the communication is coming across, or to work with them as colleagues and work on things globally to co-create what is going on in everybody's lives. And that's been my mission for many, many years. And it's really important for me to be here today with Mona and her group, because the whole point of being together is that when two or more of us are putting our minds and our wisdom in the same place and being inspired to do something, then we can go out and put that into action. And that's one of my mottos: whisperation in action.
absolutely fantastic. And thank you for sharing that. I know we can be talking for an entire hour about your experience and your global ventures and travels and all of that. But throughout your work, I always see the word co-creating solutions.
Mhm.
Co-creating. Can you dive into that and give us more examples of what does it mean for someone when they hear co-creating solutions?
I'm one of those people who a lot of people would call a black sheep. I'm not the person who goes in line and does everything according to the book. I'm not a person who has millions of certificates, on the wall behind me to show all the wonderful places I've gone and all the things that I've learned. I've done a lot of things. I've read a lot of books, as you can see. Yes, they're real. This is not a Zoom background.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the whole point of being in a room and having other people involved, if it's just two of us, as we are at the moment, but also when there are large groups of people in a room, and whether it's a room on premise somewhere where we're all sitting in one room, or as we are now in an online space. The important thing is when we come together, we all bring things with us that we know, but we all bring questions. There are always
Mhm.
things that we don't know about whatever the topic of the day is. And the
Mhm.
important thing is what happens in that interaction,
Mhm.
because people come together to come away from the experience better than they were before. And for many, many people, especially in corporate, and I've worked for many, many large organizations throughout the world, there is always something they want to be achieving. And if it means that they're doing it in many different geographical locations, on the one hand, but also, why is it, for example, that people from the finance department can't talk to the people from the engineering department? Even if they're living in the same country and don't speak the same language, that doesn't necessarily mean they understand culturally things in the same way.
Yeah.
And the problem is often not what people know, it's what they don't know about the other people. And that's why it's hard to come to the solutions. And if we don't find good ways of having conversations where people are saying what it is they know, but also asking the questions about what they don't know. I talk
Mhm.
about my audience as being best professionals: business, engineering, science, technology, all the things I'm not, which is really
Mhm.
great because I learn a lot from them and they can learn from me. But I also talk about best questions: brilliant, engaging, sensitive, and timely. And if you learn to ask questions in that way and everybody shares in the room, by the end of the time you spend together, you've come up with solutions. You've come up with ways to improve your interactions with the people in the room, and possibly what you're doing beyond that in your team, in your company, in the world, with your clients, whatever, because we're all trying to improve. And the world only gets better if we find the solutions to the problems or the issues that we have. And we do that best if we do it as a group and we co create what it is we need, because it's exclusive to what's happening to us at the moment.
Hmm. And by the way, I agree with everything that you're saying so far. But for us to co-create, okay, a lot of what I find or found in the past that sometimes you got to have a mindset for this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the question would be, what mindset shifts are needed for a professional to embrace this collaboration over competition? Before you answer that, I mean, I have ample examples of people coming in at first as collaborators, but it quickly turns to competition.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to have an elevation, first of all, and a certain mindset to know what co creation and collaboration mean.
Well, and I don't think it's so much what it means, like the definition in the dictionary. I mean, we could all go and read what that says, and that's not the problem. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is how we live it in the moment in the room. And just as if I had wanted to be competitive, I could have let you get through half of your sentence and then interrupted you and said, I know more about this than you do, so now I'm going to talk. But see, that wasn't the point of the exercise. I needed to hear all the things that you were going to say to make an informed answer about what you were discussing, number one, and to make sure that what I am saying is adding to the conversation. It's not making it negative. It is not being against any person or idea in the room, number one. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, it's building together to come to something bigger than you personally could do or I personally could do. That's the whole point. We get a bigger thing and we get a better answer to what we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at if we're doing it together. And if we're just fighting each other and tearing each other down all the time, things are getting smaller. It's all diminishing. People are
Mm-hmm.
upset. People have to worry about their emotions as well as their ideas. That makes it even worse. So if we go in with this and say we're all going to have a better experience if we do it together and we cooperate instead of compete, as you mentioned, then we're all in a much better place.
Hmm. And how do you help identify? Is there a mechanism? Is there a system, assessment system to identify the right people to co-create with, especially in a global or cross-functional teams or environment? What do you
Well,
look for?
well, the fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you see it, point for me is always somebody put me on an airplane and said, you're going to China and we're going to put 12 people in the room and you work with them. For most of my career, and even today, I don't always get to choose who is in the room. All I get to choose is how I interact with those people who are in the room. And there have been people in the room who, when I'm standing in the front of the room and there are the 12 people sitting there and learning whatever it is we're learning, and one of them always knows everything better than I do, and this has happened on occasion. At one point, there was this gentleman, I said, I think the most important thing we need to do now is switch places. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when I mention things, you're always coming in and thinking you have the better idea. And if that's the case, that's great. But then I don't need to be standing at the front of the room. I'm just going to come and sit in your chair and you come to the front and you continue leading the discussion. All of a sudden he got very quiet and he didn't say anything else for about an hour because he was totally afraid to come and stand at the front of the room. He was very happy being against me from the back. But when I mentioned that because he knew so many wonderful things, he could also come and take my place, that was the end of the problem. So a confrontation wouldn't have helped. I made him an offer. He decided not to take me up on that offer. He stayed in his chair. I stayed in my chair. And this discussion continued.
That's a very nice example. Now, would you change your language? Was this instant that you just mentioned, story that you mentioned, was it with an American or German or any?
No, this was an international group of people. They were all European.
Okay.
We were all speaking English, but they were from many different countries in Europe.
I
don't remember which country the gentleman was from, but it was a European group.
Okay. And what are some, obviously people from different parts of the world will take what you just said differently.
Sure.
I would like to know what are some of the most common communication pitfalls you see across geographical areas or cultures.
Well, I think it's important that's why I talk about geographical culture, but I also talk about organizational culture, the thing about people in finance and people in engineering also not being able to speak to each other, even if they grew up in the same town and are now working in the same company. So for me, there are those two aspects of culture. If you want to look at geographical culture, there are millions of books and systems and, people who have their own models of how the world works and how many points people are on this scale and that scale. There are millions of those, and I've learned about a lot of them. I'm a very intuitive person. I could sit down and show you a lot of them here in these books if you'd like. But I'm not a person who works well with theory. I learn a lot of theory, as you can see, but I'm very much in the moment when I see things happening. There are some, for me, sort of my principles, like making sure you ask the right questions. As I said, my 4 kinds of questions that I mentioned to you. One of the worst things in the world for me personally is that everybody thinks what's important is making statements. And for me, the important skill is learning to ask good questions, because that's how a conversation develops. And if everybody just sit and talks at everybody and there's no interaction because there are no questions, then we're not making progress. So for me, asking questions is a absolutely fundamental thing. No matter where in the world you're from, no matter what you're talking about, asking questions is the first thing. The second one, many people, when they speak English, they talk about, well, this person sets expectations like a boss, and this person must meet those expectations, like the employee. I've always said the world doesn't work well when there's one person deciding everything for the other person. My phrase is we have to match expectations. Expectations should never be set or met, they should always be matched. So you talk about your expectations, as we did before in the green room, who's going to introduce, who's going to say what. We matched our expectations before we came onto the call. And all the times when people are not each saying their own thing and it's coming together and we make a joint decision on where we want to go and how we should be doing it, then it doesn't matter what your job is, what your role is, what country you come from, how much experience you have, how good your level of the language is. All of those things play a role. But if people are willing to ask questions and listen and have a dialogue, and if people are willing to say, I bring my things to the table, you bring your things to the table, we figure out what those are and we move forward from there. For me, those are the two things that I use as the fundamental basis for every conversation that I have, no matter who I'm talking to, no matter where I am in the world, no matter what the subject is.
Huh. That is quite a great point that you just mentioned. Set expectations. Now, what do you do? What Rhonda does when you set expectations and they're not implemented?
Well, no, I match them.
You match them.
I bring you mine, and then I ask you for yours, and then we put them together, and then we can go forward. It's never a one-sided thing, expectations.
Okay. For you, yes. And I completely understand that. What I wanted to say is, let's say you and I are co-creating something of meaning. We are talking about expectations, but you are noticing that my expectations are off. How do you handle that situation? How do you handle the situation as far as communication goes? Because communication, as much as we say we are pro, we are learning, we are expert, we are this, there is always room for improvement. There's always areas of progress.
Definitely.
I am finding that out every single day. And the more I learn, the more I realize that I need to learn a lot more. And I am adjusting and I am trying my hardest to make sure that not only I am appealing to the other person in a way that I'd like them to understand, but I am also aware of how that communication translate to me first. And it's just fascinating. I mean, let's go back. I know I derailed, but let's go back. If the expectations are not met, or you're seeing that whatever we agreed on, or you came with yours, I come with mine, and they're not there. What is the best course or tone or method to handle that as far as communication goes?
Well, there are a lot of the factors that we spoke about before that play a role in that. One of those is the fact that conversations, including the expectations part, I have a 9-part framework which is called Creavelop. So it's half is create and half is develop, if you put the two words together. And Creavelop is grouped into 3 sets of 3. 3 is a classic number for many parts of the world to have groups of things. And the 3 sections, we won't go into all 9. We'll just talk about the 3 main sections. The first section is I compare this to cooking. because as far as I know, everybody in the world has to eat. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what language you speak. And
Uh-huh.
so the first three elements are what I call the ingredients. So they are the things you bring to the conversation before the conversation even starts. So there are things about your personality, about your culture, about the language you speak, all of those things, that you bring with you that are part of the meal before the meal even is made.
Uh-huh.
The second part are the utensils. So the actual tools you use to make sure that while you are getting into the conversation and you're bringing your ingredients, how are you cutting things, or how are you mixing things, or all the things we do with utensils when we're in the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
We're putting all the things together and we're putting them into the right shape or the right form. And the third part is the actual meal. And the meal is when we sit down and all the ingredients have been worked through the tools, and we are now actually eating the food and having the discussion. And if you look at conversations in those three ways, and you say, be focused on what you just mentioned before, which is a wonderful, I just have different words for it. What does each of us bring, and what is our awareness of what each of us ourselves is bringing to the table? What are the tools? How are, for example, one of the tools is expectations. One of the tools is point of view. Do I think I'm an expert and the other guy is also an expert? Or do I think, oh, in my case, very often, when I work with research scientists who have PhDs in biology and chemistry, I am not the expert in the room for those things. But I work with them on negotiation. So I'm the expert on negotiation, and they're the expert on their science. So
Hmm.
we're bringing different utensils to the room, but when we're working then on how to negotiate, each of us has utensils, and the meal is when we actually practice the negotiation and see how it's going to work.
Hmm.
And everybody learns. I have learned so much about scientific things, having worked with a global chemical company for 17 years and teaching 750 of their scientists how to negotiate
Mhm.
worldwide.
Mhm.
I have learned so much about science that I would have never learned anywhere else, because every time they explained things in the negotiation, I had to figure out what that was. So I knew if they
Yeah.
were putting the points across well or not. But of course, they were learning from me what are the things you have to know about negotiation, so that when you're talking to your counterpart later in the real negotiation, where I could never take part, they had to know what they were bringing to the table was being said in a way that the other people could discuss it with them, and they could come to the decision that had to be made in the negotiation. And that was the meal. The negotiation was the meal. So that's
Hmm.
one of the ways I use to talk about this thing, because I said worldwide, we all, as far as I know, we all have to have something to eat. And I think everybody can look at that and say, oh, okay, now that makes sense. Those are the things that we need to have. We need the basics, we need the way to work on it. And then we see what we actually develop at the table when we have the meal, like a negotiation, for example, or co
Hmm.
creating a new solution, which is what a negotiation is.
Yeah. And all the points, the cooking, the utensils, and meal, we all have we all have to eat, that's for sure. But what is it that we are going to eat is going to vary, and the utensil we use and the cooking method we use is going to vary from culture to culture, right?
Right,
we,
exactly.
we know that. For the viewer, anyone interested in this method, what would you tell them? And I will definitely pitch in if necessary. There's cooking utensils and meal. They just don't sound, look, or taste the same
Hmm.
across cultures. So, what advice do you give people who took this method and ready to apply it, but they are operating in a diverse environment? Just few tips that you'd like to give them.
Well, first of all, let's go back to when you go to a restaurant that serves cuisine from a country that is not your own. I mean, we all do that. You know, everybody says, I have my favorite X restaurant, Chinese, Italian, you know, you name it, whatever it is, wherever you are in the world, you can go to a Chinese restaurant and eat Peking duck, for example. All right. So everybody knows, and everybody thinks when you go to a Chinese restaurant and you decide whether you're the person who can use chopsticks or not. I'm not good at chopsticks. They always look at me for 10 minutes and then they hand me a fork. That's always nice. They're always very polite about that. I always try and it's never very good. So, you know, those are those kinds of things that come up. But we all think we know about those things until the first time I went to China. And the colleagues, my colleague and I were flying in from Europe. And the colleagues said, well, you know, we can't be with you the first evening because we've got something else going on. But they said, get in the taxi, go to this restaurant. It has the best Peking duck in the city. They know how to handle tourists. So if we're not there, you know, they can talk to you and everything. That's fine. We said, good. And they said, and don't say anything about the duck. And we were like, what do you mean don't say anything about the duck? And they said, well, it's just not going to be what you think. And Patrick and I were sitting there and we said, you know, our colleagues from such and such had sent us and said the name. Oh, yes, we know the colleagues. And everybody was so nice. And then we said, we were told, you know, we should definitely have your Peking duck. And they said, oh, yes, and wonderful. And they brought the Peking duck and it looks totally different from where I have ever had Peking duck in any place in the world ever. And it doesn't look terribly nice compared to other places where I'd had Peking duck. And later, but we knew we were supposed to be expecting something different. And so it tasted very nice and we ate it and everything was wonderful. And the next day, the people in the group explained, and I don't have all the details in my mind anymore, about why Peking duck looks so different because of the way it's prepared, and that it is so difficult to do, which is why nobody in another country does it. And you only get real Peking duck if you're in a Chinese restaurant in Beijing getting this in that way. And what I'm saying is, it's the same thing with our conversations. If you go and I speak to you, and I know that each of us was born in one place, but we live in a different place, you and I both know that we see the world in a different way because we haven't lived in one culture our whole lives. But I know that when I walk out my front door and go to my neighbor's house, and there are people in my neighborhood who've never been outside of Germany, for example, I can't expect the same things from them. I can't have the same kinds of conversations with them. And so the whole thing for me is being centered in who each of us is individually and what we're bringing with us to the conversation, and having as much awareness as you can for the other people in the room who are with you. And if you don't know what's going on with them, go back to asking the right questions, because you can't have the right kind of conversation if you don't know what their level of awareness is for the things that you're talking about. It's why I work so hard with best professionals, because many of them wonderful, brilliant people who have so much in their minds, but then they get sent to talk in the city hall of the little town where the factory is and explain what's happening in the factory. They can't do that as the same way they can when they're sitting in the factory with their peers. And to teach them to learn about what is the awareness, what do the people in that room know at all about the factory? What do they care about? What's interesting for them? What level can you talk to them at? I don't know if you remember the film Philadelphia, where they sit together, these two lawyers, and Tom Hanks is talking to Denzel Washington and saying, you know, all of these things happen. I want you to represent me as my lawyer. And Denzel Washington looks at Tom Hanks and says, excuse me, you're going to have to explain this to me like I'm 5 years old, because I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
And being aware of what's going on the other side of the screen, in our case, or the table, and
Yeah.
understanding where that person is coming from, not only what they know, but what they want to know. And we're back to matching expectations. If I'm a
Mm,
scientist, I don't need to give all the details to the people who live in the town. They want to know about other things that are happening with the factory. And that's
yeah.
one thing I did for a very long time. I helped prepare people do those things because they said, we
Hmm.
don't know what to say when we go to this town meeting, for example. And so those are the kinds of, not, they were all speaking German. That wasn't the problem, but they
Yeah.
would have talked so far above what they wanted, and they would have not been interested in those things. And I
Yeah.
said, talk to me. Talk to like me like you're talking to your children. What do your children want to know about what you do every day at work? Oh, oh yeah. I said, yeah, because the people outside in the town, they don't know any more about your work than your children do.
You are actually mentioning a fascinating point, Rhonda, because first of all, this is what comes to mind right now is adjust, adjust, adjust. Learn how to adjust. Prepare, prepare, prepare.
Exactly.
But then what I'm thinking about is sometimes we use the word elevation. Like, for example, when you are talking to someone or communicating with someone and you're not seeing eye to eye, you're not understanding one another. You say, well, you use the word, or at least I've used it in the past, and tell me if that's arrogant or it's not, or the normal thing to say is we're not in the same elevation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct description of situation where we placed in an environment where we're having a conversation with someone and we're not on the same page because I am here and they're on the other side?
Exactly.
So is that just mismatch, elevation issue, or cross-cultural issue in terms of language or in terms of level of communication?
It can be all of those things. And that's the
Mm.
whole point. And that's why it's so difficult when people say, Rhonda, just give me the top 3 tips to do X, whatever that is. There are
Oh,
so many factors. You have just mentioned so many of those wonderful factors that play a role. And the most important thing is, as you said, first of all, to prepare as much as you can
yeah.
before you get there. That was a very important point that you just brought up. But the second thing is, as much as you are prepared, if something goes wrong, if it's not the way you anticipated it was going to be, if you made some kind of an assumption, which you should try never to do if you can,
Mm-hmm.
um, the 4 agreements, don't make assumptions, one of the third one. Um, but if you've got something in your head and you get there and you say something and you look at the other person, you say, oops, I'm way off the track. We are not at the same table, or we're not in the same boat, or we're not at the same level or the same wavelength or the same chemistry. I mean, people use lots of different words for this. The whole point is, how do you assess where you are? How do you ask the questions to make sure you find out where the other person is? Because if it's not working and it's up to you to adjust, to say, oops, I think there's something that's not working here. And I am sorry, but I don't know exactly what it is. And I would love your help in trying to figure out how I can have this as an easier conversation for both of us, how I make sure the message is coming across, how I make sure that things work in a way that we both get benefit. There is no
Mm-hmm.
sense in having a conversation if it's a great time for me and I think it's wonderful and you get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
It has to be give and take. And if there are probably lots of people in America who are watching this, and lots of people around the world also watch American football. If you think about a team that is playing American football, there is a person in the middle who has the ball at the beginning. That person is called a center. They pass the ball to the gentleman who's called the quarterback. And he's sort of like the brains, if you will, of the whole thing. And he is standing there with the ball in his hand. So he is the sender in communication, and the ball is the message. But now he walks back, he looks around the whole field. He has to see where all the other players are, not only on his own team, but also on the other team. He has to protect the message, first of all, himself. And he has to decide, is he going to move the message forward on his own? Is he going to hand it to somebody standing next to him? Is he going to look way far down the field? And is he going to throw the ball to someone? And the message is going to be transported over a much wider distance, which is what we're doing now with social media, where we're here today on Facebook, for example. So the person who starts with the message, in this case, the quarterback, has to make the right decisions about how to move the message forward to the receiver. Who is the receiver? And how does the message move in a way that the receiver gets it and that there's the benefit for both? If the quarterback gets the ball and he drops it, there's no benefit. The message gets lost, if you will. If he throws it, but the other person can't catch it, then he's also done something that means the message dies because it falls on the ground. And it doesn't come into the hands of the people who are supposed to be getting it, the receiver. And when we look at communication, that's also, we talk about a sender and a receiver. And if you want to see this visually, a lot of people say American football is a great way to look at that, because you have different options and you have to decide in that moment, what is the best option for the message to get where it needs to go? And sometimes is it as we're doing it orally at the moment. For other people, it's better if it's in writing. For people who are blind, it is better in Braille so they can feel it with their fingers. You know, everybody has a different way they take in the message. And it's up to us who are the senders of the message to find the best way to make sure the receiver gets what he should be getting, or she.
I am listening to you, Rhonda, and I'm saying, oh, this is complicated. This is complicated here, and this is absolutely fascinating. It is. I mean, any way you look at it, we're not. We just got to understand that we're not perfect.
Exactly.
Okay. And at the same time, we cannot be hard on ourselves, and going into every situation with the best intention, trying to deliver the message the way you see it fit. Because no matter how good you think you're doing it, there's always that buffer, the middle that you just talked about, that has an impact or an effect on how it is received.
Yes.
And it's a constant thing. So how do we win this battle? I mean, we can talk about this the whole day, but we're not going to do that. We are going to move on to, I am enjoying the conversation, by the way. And every time we have a conversation or I hear you speak, I am learning a lot and enjoying the wisdom that you share with others, and the wisdom that you're really going out in the world and putting out there for others to benefit from. And that's a quite noble thing to do. I know you were in Switzerland briefly before we go to the next topic, because I know you're big in AI and all this stuff. Why did you go? How was it? What can you tell us? Should we go next time? So go ahead.
Oh, very much so. I was, for those of you who haven't been part of the conversation until now, last week in Geneva, Switzerland, United Nations hosted its 8th annual AI for Good conference. I was there last year for the first time in person. I was there this year for the second time in person. Last year it was 2 days. This year it was 4 days of conference. So, and they've doubled the size of the building that it took place in. So it has grown tremendously just within the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 4 magical days with 10,000 other people in this
Wow.
venue and millions of people online. So if next year people want to attend this and they don't have the chance to go to Geneva, Switzerland, you don't have to go. You just look up online AI for Good Summit. And
AI for Good Summit. Okay.
yes, and you can sign up to attend virtually, which many, many people do. And you can also sign up to be on that page in what they call their neural network.
Uh-huh.
And if you create a profile there and you say what you're interested in, what things about AI you're interested in, every time during the year when there are other events or they do replays of the things that we had this past week,
Mm-hmm.
you get an email notification saying, we are going to be showing this. Would you like to join? And it's all free of charge. So you can be in the online group. You can also go to Geneva. I mean, you have to get to Geneva, but once you're there, you can also attend free of charge. So if you're in Europe or you're thinking of a good time to go to Europe next summer and you're interested in AI, this would be a wonderful thing to have as part of your itinerary if you'd like to do that. I spent 4 days with absolutely magical people who are doing things that I could not even dream of, let alone figure out how to do in real life, which is what they were doing. And
Wow.
so many of those things that were extremely interesting to watch. So I'll just give one example. There were hundreds of examples I could give. There was a gentleman on the stage in a wheelchair and another gentleman sitting next to him, and they were discussing, and they said the gentleman in the wheelchair was the first person ever in the world to drive a Formula One car, race car, on a
Uh-huh.
Formula One racetrack with his brain because he is paralyzed from the neck down. He cannot move his
Uh-huh.
hands and cannot move his feet. And
Mm.
he drove the car with his brain waves with AI.
Wow.
And he
Wow.
then was at a meeting where Lewis Hamilton was on the stage and speaking, and he was in the audience. And he spoke to Lewis Hamilton and said, I am the first person who has ever driven a Formula One race car with his mind on a Formula One track. And I would like to challenge you to race against me.
Huh.
And Lewis Hamilton said, yes, but only if I can drive with my brain as well. So there's going to be a race at some point in the future coming up
Wow.
with this gentleman racing against Lewis Hamilton in cars where they only use their brains to steer, to accelerate, to brake, to do all of those things because this gentleman cannot use his hands and feet. Just one
Wow.
example of things that are happening now with AI.
Well, this is fascinating, and I know that the world of AI is advancing very, very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
The question is always, how can we keep up with it? Really, how? I mean, there are a lot of questions I have, and the audience has about AI. But one thing I would ask is, how do you define the relationship between natural human and artificial intelligence, whether in leadership, in daily lives, in workplace? How do you define that?
Well, let's say it's if I was mentioning this to someone the other day, those of us who are old enough to remember these times, and a lot of people listening to us probably are not, many, many years ago, in any big company that you went to, there was a room somewhere in the building with ladies, mostly ladies, sitting there with a
Mm-hmm.
typewriter and a thing that was called a dictaphone. And
Oh,
somebody in an office somewhere had spoken into this and said what he or she wanted written in a letter. And this machine was taken to this room, and all these ladies just sat there the whole day and listened to these little cassette tapes and typed the letters. And that was called a typing pool. All of those nice people sitting there just typing what other people said. If
hmm.
you think about that, in the 50s and the 60s, every big company had a typing pool. All of those nice ladies who were sitting there typing all the letters from all the other people in the offices.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
All of those ladies have gone on to do other things. I don't know what they're doing now, but they all got other jobs when we didn't have typing pools anymore because people had emails. Okay, so people were typing their own things and sending them. There were no papers, there were no envelopes, there were no stamps. We all remember those times when there were no things electronically, and now there are. We're going
Mhm.
through a similar shift now between the things that we've always had to do with our own human brains, what we have to think about, how you and I discuss, for example, all of those things, and what is happening now because things in AI are able to pick up on what is going on in our brains, how we talk to them, how we type, how we whatever we use for the interaction. And another thing I saw at the conference, which is a wonderful thing about this, there was a young lady at a stand with little teddy bears. And I
Uh-huh.
said, "Oh, they're really nice." And she said, "Yes, they are done on Bluetooth technology. So no internet, no wireless LAN, no nothing, only
Wow.
Bluetooth. And they are equipped with AI. So a child can talk to the teddy bear and the teddy bear talks back."
Wow.
And the interesting thing about this is the parameters for this are set by the parents.
Fascinating.
Parents also get the chance to listen to the conversations. The parents also can program this little teddy bear to say, if my child talks about these things, I want to be warned about that. Things that they're worried about, or negative emotions, or difficulties, or whatever. The parent decides with the company how to program this little teddy bear so that no matter when the child talks to it, if there's something that it detects that is going wrong, the teddy bear can give the information to the parents.
Huh.
This is not online. This is not on the internet. This is in your own home. And the little teddy bear is talking to the child. That's
I
maybe nice to say what you were talking about, how this works. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm listening to you and I need time to process all of this and absorb all of this and imagine what kind of world we're going to be living in. I don't know, just 5 years from now,
Sure.
not 10, not 20.
No.
And are we in our human capacity, brain capacity, are we ever going to be able to keep up with the advancement of technology? And in this case, will be AI. I mean, there's just in my opinion, there's just too much. How can we keep up if we ever can do that?
Well, the question is, do we have to keep up? Would be my question, first of all, because if you think about in the past, I mean, I have 40 meters of books on my walls in my house. And if people always say, "Have you read all those books?" I say, "Yeah, except for dictionaries and things. Yes, I've read all these books." But of course, I don't have all of that completely at my disposal all of the time, all those books. But when we all started going online and when we said, "Ask Dr. Google," or whatever other nice search engine you like to use, we all know that we don't need that in our brains anymore because we can go someplace and we can ask a question and it gives us that input. So we don't need to be carrying it around in our brains. There's another source to be getting that from. And I listened
Uh-huh.
to a podcast recently where an AI lady from Australia was talking about training two AI agents to do something. So she was training this one to do one thing and this one to do something else. And they decided that they needed to talk to each other, the two
Uh-huh.
agents. So they each gave themselves a name so they knew which one was which. They also started their own language to talk to each other. And
Uh-huh.
they are now teaching her their language.
Oh.
And the statement that Dr. Wallace is now making is that AI is not a method or a tool or a technology or, whatever all the nice words that you are hearing about at the moment. She's saying it's a species. And you don't talk to a dog or a flower or a tree or a cat in the same way that you talk to a person.
Uh-huh.
And she says if AI is a species, we won't talk to AI and AI won't talk to us in the same way as we make all those distinctions with other species in the world.
Yeah.
Because trees, for example, talk to each other.
Yeah.
There's a company that is now translating how dogs bark into human language so that we understand what dogs are saying. There are all these things going on between my claim to fame at the moment is we need to be looking at natural intelligence, meaning what are plants and animals doing to
Yeah.
communicate? And we're learning a lot more about that because of AI. What are the humans doing? And what is the artificial intelligence doing? And we're going to co-create the best solutions if we're taking the best of each of those three intelligences.
Uh-huh.
So we have
Uh-huh.
the natural from plants and animals and I don't
Mhm.
know, clouds or whatever else we have in nature. Then we have the things that we all do humans, which is what we do every day. So that's what we know most about. But then, of course, what's happening with AI, it's another form of intelligence. But if we put all three together, if you think of the teddy bear
Yeah.
talking to the child with the AI, you see we are getting three kinds of intelligences that are working together.
Huh. Wow. Uh, all I can say, obviously, AI is now integral part of everything we do every single day. I mean, pretty much we depend on it. Uh, should we worry, or the critics will say, well, the way we see it happen, probably it will lessen from our abilities of critical thinking. What would you answer to that question?
I would say that um, Greg Hinton, who was one of the who's called a grandfather of AI, he's one of the people who's worked on AI for 50 years. He said, if you want to know how AI will be in the future, think now about how you talk to a chicken.
So, chicken,
So we would be the
okay.
chickens and AI would be the people, if you look at it that way. That's his interpretation. I'm not so negative as that.
Uh
But
huh.
I do know that if I think about, I grew up on a farm, which is why natural intelligence is so important to me. And when I think about the way that I talked to dogs on the farm, for example, and
Uh huh.
cats and cows and chickens and all those things that we had, there's a law in my hometown, a very small town in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, that still says that till today, although nobody does it, you are not allowed to take a herd of pigs down the main street of the town. You were allowed to do that with horses and with cows and with sheep and whatever other kind of animals you had, but you were not allowed to do that with pigs.
Huh.
And the reason was pigs are too intelligent. Pigs don't always stay together in a herd. They're not a classic herd animal. They will
Mm-hmm.
go off, and one will go over here and be in somebody's backyard and make a whole little place that has, ruined the grass and everything. And nobody will find the pig because the pig is really intelligent.
Hmm.
A cow would never go off by herself and do something, but a pig would. And so the law was you don't let pigs go down the main street because you can't keep them under control. That doesn't sound like something terribly interesting when you think about it, but even at that time, hundreds of years ago, people in my town were making distinctions between different kinds of animals. We make distinctions, whether that's a good or bad thing, I won't say, but we make distinctions between different kinds of people. We will also be making distinctions among different kinds of AI, is my personal opinion. And why should it be any different than what we've been doing all these millions of years we've been on the planet? It's just the next evolution of those things.
Huh. Wow.
my
We
opinion.
can be
Yeah.
we can be talking about this all day, Rhonda. This is a lot to absorb and just fascinating discussion. I'm discovering every question takes me to another, but I gotta stop.
Yeah.
We're almost at the hour. And final remarks, final thoughts, or what would you tell women, especially marginalized women, entering into the world of global business, of AI, or all these things that we're seeing today? What would you tell them as an advice?
I would say you are fortunate to be living in this time because there has never, in my lifetime at least, or in recent years, there has never been such a good opportunity for people from any place who have done whatever they have done in the world to be able to do the things they want to do because AI is able to help them in a way that they couldn't have been helped before. And so, even if it looks very overwhelming, please have people reach out. I will give you something later to put on Facebook so people know how to find me on my link tree, for example, because it is so important that you realize that all you need is to have this awareness. And Mona, thank you so much for this opportunity today for us to be talking about things and to bring things into people's awareness, because we will only co create a better world if as many people as we can know what is going on, know the options that they have, and be able to move forward and say, we're doing things to make the world a better place. Think of the little teddy bears that are
Yes.
talking to the kids to help the parents understand what has happening with the children on all of those things. Isn't that a wonderful opportunity for us to be moving forward, because we now have access to something that we're calling artificial intelligence, which is helping us so much. But it's not very different than, if you were in Alaska and you needed to go from A to B, you had a team of husky dogs and they were pulling the sled and they were helping you get from A to B as well. We've
Uh-huh.
always had help. Now we have a magical world of help that we've never had before. And we
Yes.
need to embrace it and we need to take good care of it. And we need to make sure it's being used for good. But all the people who say, oh, it's also terrible, if you have a fire and you have it in your backyard and everybody's sitting around and having fun and singing songs and keeping warm, it's wonderful. You take that same fire and put it inside your house, it burns your house down. Everything in the world has two sides. It's called the law of polarity. When there's
Yeah.
something good about something, there can also be something bad about something. And something as basic as fire and as something as critical as artificial intelligence, it doesn't matter. That is everywhere in the world. We have to get the balance right. And we have such a wonderful opportunity to do that now. And I want to thank you again for this chance to discuss this with you and give people the opportunity to get some new insights and raise their awareness and hopefully be able to move forward on that. And as I said, I'd love to talk to anybody. I can get a calendar link to people and they can set up a call and we can talk about these things for their specific situation as well.
Well, I thank you. We're the one that should thank you for your time. I know it's late, sometimes the afternoon in
Mhm.
Germany, and you're spending it with us, sharing your wisdom and your genius. And I admire, always admire you, admire your work, and admire people like you going out there. And I always say, I want to be just like you when I grow up. And I'm always looking up to women like yourself going out there and doing the right thing, doing great things in this world, and just trying to create and co-create and make a difference and make our lives, our awareness level, everything that we stand for as human being, make it better and make it more elevated. So we thank you for that. Now you are going to, if you don't mind, of course, you are going to leave your contact information. Where can people find you? What services do would you like them to contact you with?
I think the easiest thing is I don't know if I can type it here. Should I type it in the chat or what
Yes,
would you
you
like me
can
to do?
you can type it and we can share it
Oh,
afterwards.
okay. I will put it in the chat. This is my link tree. I don't know if everybody in the group knows what a link tree is. A link tree is a way for you to write different kinds of things about yourself so people can choose what it is they're interested in looking at. And so I'm just going to put that in the chat. When you open that, you'll find lots of things. You'll find my
Okay.
websites, you'll find my LinkedIn profile, you'll find a calendar link in there for 30 minutes if you would like to set up a call to talk to me. You'll find different projects that I'm working on. You'll find out things that I'm working on with AI as well. And so if you go into the link tree, you can
Yeah.
look at all the different options and choose what is important for you and then get back to me.
I am putting it
Mhm.
here. That way we can share it with everyone on this line, or we can put it out on the comment section for people to
Yes,
see and reach out
definitely.
to you. Well, I enjoyed so much our conversation, my dear, and hopefully you'll come back again for more
Definitely.
wisdom and for more tools and strategies and tips for us to just become better human being and become better at interacting with AI, with the new world, because definitely we are entering a new phase that we have not witnessed before. How we
Absolutely.
deal with it, obviously, is going to be up to us.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely perfect, Mona. And if we want to do it the next time, if people would have questions, they'd like to submit them to you, and we can do that as a question and answer section next time. That's something we could also do. And I also have a special reverse question and answer format. If we'd like to try that, that's something we could do next time in a group as well, if that would be a preference.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are going to say goodbye to people watching us live and those who will be watching us later. We hope you enjoy the conversation and at least took some notes that will be useful to you. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay aware and stay just great human being. Okay. Thank you so much and have a great weekend.